My name is Elizabeth Murphy. Betty, if you knew me back then. I'm 96 years old now. In 1945, I was 21, U.S. Navy nurse, attached to the Marines as a corpsman, 5'3", maybe 105 pounds soaking wet. And the medical bag I carried weighed almost as much as I did. Here's the funny part. Before the war, I couldn't stand the sight of blood. Passed out once when my little brother cut his knee. Then the Navy handed me a uniform and said, "Congratulations, you're going to the Pacific." Life's got a strange sense of humor. People hear "woman in the war" and they picture offices, typewriters, coffee, letters home. That wasn't us. We were right there, just without rifles. Our weapons were gauze, morphine, and our hands.
I remember the salt spray hitting my face, cold and sharp, a stark contrast to the humid, heavy air of the Pacific. Our landing craft pitched and rolled on the dark waves, each larger knot tightening in my stomach. The night was supposed to be our cover, but the explosions lighting up the sky turned the horizon into a terrifying, flickering mural of war. I was just 23, a nurse from Ohio, and nothing in my training had prepared me for this. The textbooks never mentioned the smell of burning fuel and fear, or the deafening roar of artillery that seemed to tear the very air apart. We were told it would be a swift operation. Secure the beachhead, establish a field hospital, and be ready for casualties. Simple, they said. But as we neared the shore, the simplicity vanished, replaced by a visceral, gut-wrenching chaos. The silhouette of the island was jagged and hostile. Tracers zipped through the darkness like angry fireflies, and the rhythmic thud of machine guns became the new pulse of the world. I clutched the straps of my medical bag, the canvas worn smooth by my nervous hands. Inside were bandages, morphine, sulfa powder, the tools of my trade. But in that moment, they felt like pebbles against a tidal wave. The ram slammed down into the churning surf, and the sound was like a starting gun for a race no one wanted to run. Men, boys really, with faces grim and eyes wide, poured out into the knee-deep water, their rifles held high. The shouting of the officers was swallowed by the symphony of destruction. I followed them, my own legs heavy as lead, the water soaking my fatigues instantly. I wasn't a soldier, but I was here, on the front line of saving lives. My mission was just as critical. The beach was a nightmare landscape. Shell craters pockmarked the sand like wounds on the earth itself. The air was thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded. My training kicked in, a switch flipped in my mind that pushed the fear down, not away, but down into a manageable box. My first patient was a young Marine, no older than my little brother. He was lying near the twisted remains of a palm tree, a shrapnel wound in his leg. His eyes, full of shock and pain, found mine. "Nurse," he breathed, the word barely a whisper. I knelt beside him in the wet sand, my hands working automatically. Cut away the pant leg, clean the wound, apply pressure. "You're going to be okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're going to get you out of here." It was a promise I'd make 100 times that night, a prayer whispered over and over. As I worked, another Marine provided cover, firing his rifle into the darkness. We were a small, desperate team in the middle of hell, the wounded, the healer, and the protector. More casualties came. A burn victim, his skin seared by a flamethrower. A boy with a chest wound, his breathing shallow and ragged. A soldier in shock, staring blankly at the fiery sky, his body unharmed but his mind shattered. With each one, I focused on the task at hand. The tourniquet, the bandage, the syringe of morphine. I couldn't let myself think about their homes, their families, the lives they left behind. If I did, I'd fall apart. I had to be a nurse, an instrument of healing, nothing more. But the humanity always broke through. I remember holding a young man's hand as he passed, his last words a faint murmur of a girl's name. I found a photograph in the pocket of another, a smiling woman and a baby, and carefully tucked it back, hoping he would one day see them again. These weren't just casualties. They were sons, husbands, and brothers. Each one was a story, and I was witnessing their most brutal chapter. As the first light of dawn began to break, the fighting subsided slightly, moving further inland. The beach was now a makeshift hospital. We had set up a triage area behind a small dune, using ponchos for stretchers and helmets for wash basins. The sheer scale of the injuries was overwhelming. Amputations, severe bleeding, internal wounds. We were low on plasma, low on bandages, and running on sheer adrenaline. I remember one moment of surreal quiet. The tide had gone out, leaving behind the debris of the landing. A corpsman, his face smeared with dirt and blood, handed me a canteen. "Drink, ma'am," he said. The water was lukewarm and tasted of metal, but it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. We looked at each other for a moment, an unspoken acknowledgement of what we had just survived. We weren't heroes. We were just people, doing a job that had to be done. Later that day, I was helping a doctor in a makeshift operating tent. We were working on a soldier with a severe abdominal wound. The doctor, a man who usually had a joke for every occasion, was silent and focused, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, the soldier on the table, barely conscious, started to hum. It was a faint, wavering tune, a song I recognized from the radio back home. It was a simple love song, so out of place in this theater of pain. For a second, we all stopped. The doctor, the other nurse, and me, we just listened. It was a fragile spark of humanity in the suffocating darkness of war. It reminded us what we were fighting for, what we were trying to save. The days that followed blurred into a continuous cycle of work, exhaustion, and more work. Sleep was a luxury, snatched in 15-minute increments between waves of wounded. We ate cold rations when we remembered to eat at all. My uniform was perpetually stained with blood and dirt. My hands were raw from scrubbing, and my back ached constantly, but we kept going. We had to. For every man we lost, there were 3 more we could save. That was our mantra. We learned to find small joys, a letter from home, a shared cigarette in a rare moment of quiet, the exhausted smile of a soldier who knew he was going to make it. These were the things that kept us sane. One evening, a group of us sat on the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. For a few minutes, you could almost forget where you were. You could almost believe it was just a beautiful island in the Pacific, and not a battlefield. Looking back, it's not just the horror I remember, it's the resilience, the courage, the incredible capacity of human beings to care for one another in the worst possible circumstances. It was the corpsman sharing his last drops of water. It was the soldier humming a love song on the operating table. It was the bond we formed, a family forged in fire and blood. I went to war a girl from Ohio who wanted to help people. I came back a woman who had seen the worst of humanity, but also, miraculously, had seen its very best. That experience never leaves you. It becomes a part of who you are. And it's a story that needs to be told, so we never forget the cost of war and the value of every single life. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe for more personal histories and reflections.
I still dream about that beach sometimes. Black sand, smoke, someone yelling "Doc," and my legs start running before I even know where I'm going. Then I wake up, and it's quiet, and I'm old, and my hands aren't covered in blood anymore, just wrinkles. Funny trade, huh? But if you ask me what I'm proud of, it's not surviving. It's that nobody I treated died alone. If I could help it, they always had someone there. A hand, a voice, a witness. Sometimes that's all a human being needs at the end, just not to be alone. So yeah, that was me, Betty Murphy, Navy nurse, 5'3", scared of blood, and somehow I made it through hell with a medical bag and a stubborn heart.